The Empire of Pareena is governed by its laws that protect dragons, their lives, and the right to ownership. So when it comes to buying and selling and exchanging gold, it's the Department of Fair Trade that regulates and documents any and all buying and trading within the Empire of Pareena. Hi, I'm your host Heatwave, and in today's law episode, I'll be exploring the Department of Fair Trade. Hi, good morning. Welcome. Hmm, I see. You have such dusty and worn talons. I can clean those right up. Add a little color. I'm thinking sky blue? I'm sorry, miss. This is official business. I'm here from the Department of Fair Trade, and I'll be conducting the audit report of your marketeer's retail declaration to make sure your business is fair and meeting the expected law. Oh, oh my, I'm so sorry. I didn't recognize your uniform. How may I assist you? Welcome back to the Wings of Fire spin off series, Empire of Pareena. If you haven't done so already, please leave a like, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe so you don't miss any episodes that I publish. The Department of Fair Trade is the youngest department in the imperial government. First founded in 1100, at the new industrialization of Pareena, the Department of Fair Trade is responsible for making sure all products and services within the empire are traded for at a high quality and a fair price. This department is also responsible for workers' rights and support. But first, a little history. The creation of the Department of Fair Trade was originally an idea by the Department of Finance and Treasury. With the newfound industrial capacity of Pareena, where items could be produced in rapid succession and on a far larger scale, the Department of Finance and Treasury was concerned about just how good the quality of these new goods were. To them, they didn't want to sign away significant amounts of gold to products that may not be of great quality. And with no law protecting dragons from misleading advertising and products, the department felt the need to create a new sub-department within itself. Yet, when the idea was passed in the Imperial Parliamentary Council, the Council put forth the idea of a new department to handle all trade, buying, and selling within Pareena, rather than a simple sub-department for the sake of the Department of Finance and Treasury. The Department of Law and Order was the most vocal for a regulatory authority to handle the aspect of trade within the empire. So, with the founding of the new Department of Fair Trade, the imperial government was now able to catalogue all businesses in Pareena, manage the contracts the imperial government enters in with private companies, and provide support to workers across the empire. Let's break down the Department of Fair Trade and look at its sub-departments. Of course, at its head is the department headquarters. This is a small admin team that serves the department leader, who is responsible not just for the whole department, but also is the representative voice for the department within the Parliamentary Council of the Empire. Below this headquarters are 7 sub-departments, yet each sub-department is actually quite small in size. The Department of Fair Trade, as a whole, is one of the smallest government departments in Pareena. The first 3 sub-departments are almost identical in their function. They are simply referred to as the trifecta of sale. If you remember back to my episode on the basics of marketplaces in Pareena, I stated that for a dragon to sell their products off, they are required to send off a letter of request to the Department of Fair Trade. Well, that letter of request ends up across the desks of the trifecta of sale. There are 3 levels of sale within Pareena that a dragon can request for. There is a sub-department for each of those levels. There are the marketeer, the independent retailers, and the direct from factory retailer. These subdepartments don't really do anything exciting, though, except pushing papers and filing ledgers. Upon approval of the request, the corresponding subdepartment mails back the marketeer declaration and permission scroll. Next, we have the Subdepartment of Product Integrity. This department has the responsibility to audit certain products being sold. The subdepartment will be responsible for collecting data and statements to the product in question and compile a report detailing the successes and drawback of that said product. The subdepartment will then simply stamp the product as worthy of imperial service and worthy of government gold. But what does that actually mean? Well, this audit report only applies to products produced under contract between the imperial government and any of the private companies in Pareena. The subdepartment is essentially making sure that whatever the government is putting gold towards, it's actually worth the government gold. For example, take the Imperial tank. This is a product produced under contract. The subdepartment will speak to members of the Imperial Army and those who manufacture the tank to complete their audit. If the Department of Military Affairs is satisfied with the product they are buying, the Subdepartment of Product Integrity will approve of the buy. If not satisfactory, the subdepartment may recommend a few new courses of action, like speaking to the Department of Finance and Treasury and reducing the cost of the contract, or informing the Department of Military Affairs to contact the manufacturer to argue that their products should meet a standard set by themselves. For more on the spot work, there is the Subdepartment of the Public Audit. Their role is to conduct sudden and unexpected, on the spot audits of products, working conditions, prices of goods, and the viewment of documents. These members of the department will go out into the marketplaces of Pareena to conduct their audit. The public audit is used to make sure that the more independent retailers and marketeers are selling good quality products and services at a reasonable price to dragons. They will inspect places of business and marketeer tents to simply sample products or check documentation. Whenever these dragons deploy to the field, they of course wear a uniform. Finally, we can talk about the uniform of a dragon who serves within the Finally, we can talk about the uniform of a dragon who serves within the Department of Fair Trade. And because they work for the Imperial government, you guessed it, they wear a bakama. Like all bakamas, it's imperial blue in color and features the department's sigil on the flanks. In the field, members of the Department of Fair Trade carry an assortment of scrolls, ink, and quills to write out the audits they conduct. But that's not all. Any time a public audit is conducted by a dragon, they will be accompanied by a member of the local law enforcement detachment. This enforcer will, of course, enforce the authority of the public audit. But if a dragon is found to have violated imperial law through the audit, then their fate and judgment lies in the enforcer. Since we are talking about law, the next sub-department is the prosecutor of business. Well, this isn't actually a sub-department per se, as it's only one dragon. Their responsibility is to simply gather up all the documentation, all the audits and notes to determine if a business in Pareena is in fact lawful. If not lawful, the prosecutor of business will hand over a report to the local law enforcers to deal with. The last department is the judiciary of worker integrity and health. This last sub-department is responsible for making sure any worker employed under a registered marketeer has a fair and safe working conditions that promote the safety and well-being of dragons who work there. It's an unfortunate reality that with the introduction of major manufacturing, accidents may happen within the workplace or production line. It's required by legislation that any workplace injuries and deaths are documented and reported to this sub-department. The health and safety of all dragons is closely protected by imperial law, so the sub-department will conduct an audit on the workplace safety and introduce new standards around safety in the workplace. An example of one of these standards is maybe issuing new protective equipment to working dragons. If a dragon becomes injured, this subdepartment will provide the dragon with resources to help towards their recovery and eventual return to work. I'll give an example. Let's say some poor sea wing is working on an industrial production line, and oh no, they slice off a few of their talons. Of course, the working dragon is rendered first aid, and a report of the injury is made, while a safety audit is also conducted. This poor sea wing will be contacted about their injuries, and to make returning to work and life as easy as possible, this subdepartment will recommend the sea wing to a specialist apothecary to help them with their recovery. The sea wing will see an orthopedic apothecary and receive some shiny new prosthetic talons. In the grand scheme of things, the Department of Fair Trade doesn't really do much of anything. While their goal of limiting overspending, protecting the integrity of products and the workforce is admirable, it's an example of overcomplicated bureaucracy and how it affects the day to day operations of the imperial government. And that concludes another episode of the Wings of Fire spin off series, Empire of Pareena. Thank you very much for listening. I've been your host, Heatwave, signing off.